Caleb. How are we doing, Sound Life? Doing good, awesome, love it. Well, today, as Pastor Caleb said, we begin our brand new Christmas series, Joy to the World. And I love that we're headed towards a great Christmas season. Just stoked about everything that we're going to unpack together in God's Word and just get closer and closer to those amazing Christmas Eve services. It's going to be fantastic because we pull together as a church family to share the light and to share the joy of Jesus with as many people as possible. And there's nothing greater than that. And we celebrate these things at Christmas time. We celebrate joy and we celebrate light. We celebrate joy with, we have all the songs and we're going to have lots of parties, and we celebrate light and that theme of light in the darkness. We have candles everywhere. If you're on Christmas Eve, we do that candle lighting part of the service. It just makes it beautiful in this room. We risk life and limb on sketchy ladders to put Christmas lights on our houses. Guys, you're my people. This is good. We have lights on our Christmas trees. But what is the connection between Jesus being the joy to the world and Jesus being light in the darkness? Well, on that very first Christmas night in Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 12 says that night there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby guarding their flocks of sheep. And suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared among them, and the radiance of the Lord's glory surrounded them. Don't be afraid. But they were terrified, but the angel assured them, don't be afraid. He said, I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. And the Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David. See, Jesus was identified from the very beginning as joy. And not just any joy, but joy that is for everyone. And then, as he neared the end of his life on this earth, this same Jesus was connecting the dots all the more for us by giving substance to why he's joy to us. John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you'll have the light that leads to life. He's the light of the world. And that makes him joy to the world. It's a joyous thing when you've been trying to navigate in the dark and suddenly you don't have to anymore because you have light. Like we know this is true physically, but it's also true spiritually. I mean, have you ever found yourself stuck somewhere in the dark when you didn't want to be? Like, how did that make you feel? Do you remember what that feels like? I have this very distinct memory of being a little boy in Fred Meyer's in Salem, Oregon. It was a very stormy night. It was just me and my mom. My little brother hadn't been born yet. My dad was working nights that stretch of time. And we were at Fred Meyer, me and my mom, and we were in the freezer section at the very back of the store, deepest part of the store. And I'm sure I was scoping out all the amazing flavors of ice cream because I was pretty bored with the shopping gig by this point, just kind of tagging along with my mom, I'm sure I heard several times, come on, keep up, come on. And in the midst of that, wouldn't you know it, the power went out. I know it's hard to believe, but we didn't have cell phones back then with the little built-in flashlighty things. Like, there was no instant fix. There was no quick fix. There was no warning. Just impenetrable darkness suddenly all around me as a little boy. And you know, like what people do when something like this happens, there were like audible gasps by the people that were like taken off guard by the sudden darkness. There, sounds of a couple grocery carts bumping into stuff because they weren't quite ready for that. But then there was this like amazing silence that set in on top of the darkness. I have no idea how much time transpired while this was all going on, but for a little boy thrust into darkness without warning, not knowing where his mom was because of paying more attention to the ice cream than he was paying to his mom, it felt like forever. And this was not a great forever moment for that little boy. the darkness, like it hit, and I remember I actually like froze in place. And the people gasped around me, and it made me kind of gasp. And then, the carts banging into things, and I could remember just kind of doing this physically, like I kind of just braced. And then the silence took hold, and that's the moment that I panicked. I freaked out. I can remember becoming like one of those little cartoon characters that just runs in circles until they like hit a wall or something, then they just like lay there flat on their back. Like, that was me. Like, I just started yelling and running in circles. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know why I closed my eyes, like it's dark anyway, but I'm pretty sure I closed my eyes. But like, picture Kevin from Home Alone right now when he puts the aftershave on, right? He slaps it on and then all okay, that was me, like in the dark, eyes closed, like the power goes out, and I freak out. I just start running in circles, and I don't know why I did that. I don't know why that was my response. The people around me probably thought somebody was getting murdered while trying to pick, the difference between utterly chocolate and gold medal ribbon there in the ice cream aisle. I don't know, but like I'm just like, and I don't know why or how I didn't run into anyone else or anything else, but I am just in full freak out mode, just spinning out. And I just go and go, and because my eyes were closed, I didn't realize the lights came back on. Right? Until I heard the the grocery store music that comes back on. The lights come on, the music comes back on, and I'm just, and I kind of open one eye, and I'm like, I'm good. It's all right. I'm good, And my mom's just kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? But just like a tiny bit of light makes a difference, right? Just a little bit. Like if I know I'm old, but I don't think I'm this old. Like we had emergency exit lights back then. I don't know, like there wasn't one around. Like I could have used one in that moment, but just a little bit of light, just like from an emergency exit sign, or when you're in an unfamiliar space and you find the light switch finally, and you're like, like it feels so good. Everything changes. You can see what's been there all along. And the danger fades away and the peace settles back in. And that's what joy feels like. Joy feels like that light breaking into the darkness. But isn't it amazing at Christmas time, there's this kind of brain bender, this kind of paradox, this tension between joy and light, and light and darkness. One of the reasons that I think I'm looking forward to this series so much is because Christmas, it reminds us that we live in a world full of dark things spiritually. And we experience that spiritual darkness through things like grief and through disappointment. We experience it through anxiety, and sometimes all it takes is a headline when you're scrolling on social media and you see something and just, you feel that heaviness. You feel just the weight of that spiritual darkness. But we also know that at Christmas time, there's supposed to be that joy. We chase after it. We long for it because it's supposed to be there. There's happy faces in all the Christmas advertisements. We got Santas everywhere. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, right? Like there's supposed to be that joy, the laughter and the parties and the presents. We have special decorations and special music. But when we get down to our everyday living of life, we often find that we're lacking the resources to buy the things we want to buy or we think we should buy. We find that we don't have all the people around us to celebrate with like everybody else seems to have when you're scrolling through their social media and seeing all the perfection that they're posting there. Or we feel separated from the people that we love and we want to be close with. And so the contrast of darkness and light gets very real at Christmas time. We become more aware than ever of the darkness in this world, and Christmas reminds us that before we can experience the joy at Christmas, we need to acknowledge the darkness and the brokenness that we experience. We need to acknowledge our need for the light. And then into the brokenness and into the darkness, Jesus brings this unexpected and brings this unshakable joy by giving us light. By giving us light. And this is truly amazing, because the first thing I want us to see about joy today is that joy does not come naturally to a broken people in a broken world. Joy is unnatural in a broken world. But it sure is welcome when we experience it, isn't it? It's like that light breaking into the darkness, and it's possible because Jesus himself is the light. He is the light. And I want to invite you to turn to John chapter 1 today. If you have your Bibles with you and you want to follow along, it's going to be on the screens too, but if you have your Bibles, you want to follow along in John chapter 1, we're going to start there beginning in verse 1. And several times here in the chapter, John, the author, is going to use the term the Word. And that term, the Word, is referencing Jesus. So every time you hear it said the Word, you should hear in your head that he's talking about Jesus here, okay? In John chapter 1, starting in verse 1, it says, "In the beginning, the Word, Jesus, already existed. The Word, Jesus, was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God, and God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word, Jesus, gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it." You see, you and I, we were created for light, not darkness. Humanity was created for joy. It was created for wholeness, for life in God's light. And so that tension we feel between joy and darkness, between light and darkness, it comes from sin. It comes from the things that we've allowed to separate us from God. And sin's what introduces that spiritual darkness, that spiritual darkness that shows up in all kinds of ways, especially it seems at this time of year. And that spiritual darkness, it can show up in the form of fear. Maybe it's the fear of failure, or the fear of rejection, the fear of the unknown, or of loss, or of just being alone when we see so many other people that have others around them. Maybe it's a fear of inadequacy, or the fear of change that we don't have any control of. The fear of danger, or of harm coming to us. The fear of illness, or even death itself. The fear of financial insecurity when there seems to be so much focus put on that financial aspect of our life. Or maybe it's just looking around the world that we live in and seeing the crises around us. Spiritual darkness, it can show up in the form of shame. Maybe it's shame related to a failure of ours in our career, or in our schooling, or in our parenting. Maybe it's a shame at not measuring up to others, and we just know inevitably it's going to come up at some point around the dinner table when we're all gathered, that some comparison is going to be made, and I'm not going to measure up. Or maybe it's shame at past mistakes that maybe others are trying to help us forget, but we have a hard time letting ourselves forget. Or the shame at being excluded when others are invited and we're left out. Or the shame of being criticized. That spiritual darkness, it can show up in the form of separation, where last year at this time we were with certain people, but this year we're separated from them. And that might be due to breakups or divorce. It might be related to death. It might be conflict or betrayal that we've experienced in relationship with other people. Some of our families are experiencing estrangement from one another. Sometimes it's just drift. We just drift apart. And then there's times where we're displaced for no choice of our own, for nothing that we were responsible for, but suddenly we find ourselves separated from other people because they've been displaced or we've been displaced. And so we experience that darkness. to the point that darkness has become quote unquote normal. But darkness was never God's design for our relationships with one another. And it certainly was not his design for our relationship with him. If you've ever found yourself in a totally dark space, you know it is amazingly easy to lose all sense of direction in darkness. When I was a student at Northwest University, I was living on campus. It was my first year at school, and I had a stretch there where I got really sick. I had a really high fever, and I was just in bed for several days at a time, and it kind of finally was breaking, and I wanted to just get out of bed. Like a hot shower sounded amazing. So I remember kind of gathering my things and going down the hall to kind of like a locker room style kind of shower room. And I remember taking that hot shower. I'd kind of slept in, and so everybody else was in classes, and I was kind of the only one on the floor. And I remember getting out and getting dressed, and I stood up off the bench there in the shower room, and all of a sudden I realized I couldn't see. I thought it was one of those things like where you stand up too fast sometimes and your ears kind of ring and the vision kind of closes in. So I sat back down on the bench and I just sat there for a second. And in the time that it would normally have come back under those circumstances, it just didn't come back. And I stood up again and I thought, well, maybe somebody else is in here. So I kind of just called out like, hey, is anybody else in here? Nobody answered. And I realized suddenly, I've been in this space probably hundreds of times, but all of a sudden I was really disoriented. I wasn't quite sure which direction to head. And so I just kind of started fumbling around for something that felt familiar to kind of orient myself. And I knew at some point I was going to have to just strike out across the really open space of the shower room and kind of head for where I thought the door was. And so I did that. I was wrong. Kind of drifted right quite a ways and bumped into the counter with the sinks and stuff and turned myself again and headed in the right direction, headed for the door. And I kept going. Sure enough, nailed it. Doorknob right there. Open it up, step out into the hall, only to bang into a shelf and handles and buckets. And I was in the closet. And so I backed out of the closet, closed the door, took a step to the right, grabbed the right door, stepped out into the hallway. I could tell I was in open space. And I kept my right hand on the right wall, and I started working my way down the hallway. And I thought, I'll just rub my hand over the door plates of the door and so I can feel the door numbers and tell what door I'm at. Well, they were just stickers, and so they weren't the engraved kind where I could kind of trace the numbers. Sure, they're stickers. Of course they're stickers. I just kept walking down, and I remember calling out again, hey, is anybody out here? And I was getting kind of sarcastic in the moment because I was frustrated, and I was like, just don't mind me, can't see here. A little help? Nothing. And I figured I'm just going to have to work my way all the way down the hall because I knew my door was the last door on the right before you get to the corner and go down the stairs. So I knew I was just going to have to get to the end and then backtrack to the next door because I had no idea which one was mine. So I'm doing that. I'm going down the hall. I'm feeling my way down. And sure enough, I'm almost to the end, to my door, and my sight slowly started to come back. I don't know if it was a blood pressure thing or what, and in that moment, I honestly did not care. I was just super glad my sight was coming back, and it just kind of let me know that, hey, I can see again. I could tell my calm started to be restored. My hope that I was going to be okay started to come back as my sight started to be regained. In those moments, one candle, one match, one sliver of light that gives you sight, though super tiny, that's what it does. It restores hope. It restores calm. And the joy in knowing Jesus, it doesn't totally remove the darkness in this broken world yet. Not until he returns and takes his rightful place as King and Lord. But joy in knowing Jesus gives you and I the light that we need to keep walking through this life and following him. What would life be like without joy? Would it even be life? And some of us in this room, we've lived a season of life without being in relationship with Jesus, and we know the answers to those questions. Because without Jesus, we chase happiness, we chase it, but it's like chasing sparks that just kind of flare up from a fire, and then quickly they're just gone. But the light of Christ, the light of Jesus, the joy that he brings cannot be extinguished. Joy that cannot be taken away has to come from a light that cannot go out. And that's what John is showing us next, that the light himself has entered our world. That the joy came down to us in Jesus, and the light entered our darkness. Joy came down to us in Jesus, and the light entered our darkness. And in John chapter 1, if we keep going at verse 9, John says, "The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become the children of God. They're reborn, and not with a physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son." See, the astonishing truth about Jesus coming down to us is the God who made light became human to walk among us in our darkness. That phrase, "made his home," literally means that he pitched his tent. It's like God moved into the neighborhood. And if you've ever felt like God was far away, then Christmas is the story of how far he came to be close. And do you know why this brings joy into our lives? It's because the light isn't an idea, it's a person. It's Jesus, and we can know him. Jesus brings the presence of God into our everyday lives, and you can experience that today. Jesus' light doesn't just reveal truth, it restores relationship. Remember back in Fred Meyer's when Shannon was just like, ah! Remember? Like, and remember when I said how when the lights came back, I shifted from freak out mode to like, I'm good. That's not how it went down. I lied to you. What really happened is when the lights came back on in Fred Meyer, I ran to my mom. When the lights came back on in Fred Meyer, it not only let me see what was real around me again, but it gave me the ability to run to my mom and be reconnected to her as I came out of the darkness. And that's what it's like with Jesus. The light that he brings into our life, it definitely shows us what is true and not true about our lives. The light that Jesus brings into our lives, it gives us the ability to see what is true and what is not true about the world around us. The light that Jesus brings into our lives, it gives us the ability to see what is true and what is not true about God. But the light he brings also gives us the opportunity to run back to God. And to be in relationship with him as we come out of the darkness of this world and the sin and the brokenness that surrounds us. It gives us the ability to run back to God. When a storm knocks out electricity, we realize how much depends on light. We experienced this just a few weeks back on a Saturday night. Like it messed up some of our Sunday stuff here, and I was up at 4 a.m. trying to plug stuff into generators and get them running. And our Orting Valley campus people had to come up here to be able to go to church that Sunday. And when the electricity is restored, everyone cheers. Yeah! But that's what happened when Jesus entered the world. The light came back on for humanity. And when we recognize him for who he is, those verses in John verses 10 and 12 said that he came into the world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. When we recognize him for who he is, we receive the right to become children of God. And that relationship is the source of lasting joy. But John doesn't stop there. He tells us where this joy comes from and how it never runs out. Because another thing we need to understand about joy is that the joy that God gives is a joy that will never run out. There's an endless supply, the joy that God gives. If we keep going, verse 16 says, from his abundance, we have all received one gracious blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Jesus. No one has ever seen God, but the unique one, the one unique Son of God, Jesus, who is himself God, is near to the Father's heart, and he has revealed God to us. One gracious blessing after another. He has an endless supply of joy for you and I. And God's gifts are many. He is the giver of good gifts. We experience God's amazing gifts in the beautiful things around us in this life. Every time you see something beautiful, I hope you look at it and say, wow, God, thank you. What an amazing gift. God's gifts, we see them in our family, and as many of us got to spend time with family and be surrounded by family this last week, I hope as you looked on your family, something inside of you said, thank you, God. What an amazing gift you have surrounded me with here in my family. We see God's gifts in creation. Like there's nothing better than being on a hunting trip in Idaho and getting high up on a mountain above the clouds as the sun comes up and see the sun just radiate off the top of the clouds just like they're made of silver. And to look out at that and see God, wow, how amazing. What an amazing gift you've given. But the greatest gift of all, the greatest gift, it's himself. The greatest gift is himself. And 2 times now in John chapter 1, we've read this phrase, unfailing love and faithfulness. That God is full of these things, and that we've been given access to them through Jesus. Deuteronomy and Hebrews both remind us that God has said, and Pastor Kayla reminded us in the prayer time at the end of worship today, God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. And to know that even one person in the world loved you that way with unfailing love and faithfulness should bring you such amazing joy. Such amazing joy. And Jesus doesn't bring joy, he is joy. He is joy. And the world like has this like counterfeit, this shallow view of what joy is, this shallow definition of what joy is. And when you compare it to what God says is real joy, it's like, wow. Because the world says that joy depends on our circumstances. It depends on how things are going. And God says, no, joy, real joy, that springs from relationship with me. The world says that the joy is one of those things that can just kind of come and go. And God says, no, joy, real joy is a joy that endures. The world says that joy is just kind of about us. It's just about self. It's just about number one. And God says, no, real joy is about connection with God. And the world says joy, it's one of those things that can, will, and we should expect to just kind of fade with time. It's just going to fade away. But God says, no. If it's real joy, if it's joy that I've given you, that's going to deepen through eternity. Real joy is just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And we can live in joy not because life is perfect, because we all know it's not. But we can live in joy because the light never leaves. The light never leaves. So, joy to the world. The Lord is come. Let earth let us receive our King. So the question for us today is, how are we doing at that? How are we doing at receiving our King? And that's the most important question we could ask, and this is the most important part of the service right now as we ask it. More important than getting ahead in the line at Kids Church, more important than another cup of coffee, more important than wherever any of us are serving next service. Like, this is the most important. So let's stay focused and let's stay here for a moment. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back, and for all of you in the room, I'm going to ask you to grab one of the response cards that's in a chair back near you and grab a pen. Like, all across the room right now, this is the most important thing we could do, so let's all do it. If you need to ask somebody to hand you one because you're in the front row, please do that. Because God is speaking to each and every one of us through his word today. He has a very clear and distinct message for each and every one of us, and the best thing that any of us could do is to respond. I don't know if you remember when that show Survivor first came out on TV. I remember the tagline that, like, the big voice guy, would always come on the advertisements, and he would, outwit, outplay, outlast. And sometimes that's the approach we take with God. That's the approach we try with God. We try with life. Like I can do this. I got this. I know I'm in the dark, and I know I'm kind of fumbling around with my life right now. I know I keep ending up in places that I don't want to be. And I don't know the last time I experienced anything that I'd call real joy. But I can do this. I got this. And we keep trying to double down, and we keep trying to do it in our own strength and our own ability and bring our own light to the situation. But physically, if we've all been in those situations trying to bring our own light, like, eventually the batteries in the flashlight die. Eventually you run out of matches. Eventually the generator runs out of gas. Like, trying to bring our own light to the situation is going to fail us. And spiritually speaking, that's even way more true. Than any light we try and bring in the situation, the circumstance, any joy that we try and bring of ourselves, our supply is limited. We are limited. We can't outrun, we can't outsuffer, we can't outlast the light of Jesus. And the light, that joy is what he offers you and I today. We just have to decide if we'll receive it or not. If we'll surrender our efforts to try in and of ourselves, to be enough light, to be enough joy, to get us through. That joy that Jesus brings, it is unnatural in this broken, dark world. But it sure is welcome when we experience it. A light shining in the darkness. And it's a joy that's come down here. It's here. Jesus came and became human and made his home among us. He moved into the neighborhood so that he could be close and we could know that joy and that light. And it's a joy that overflows. There is more than enough. There's more joy to Jesus than any of us could ever even imagine, because it's rooted in his very presence. And the most important question all of us could answer today is, have we received the light? Have we received the light? Have we opened our heart to the joy that cannot be taken away? And if you haven't done that, then on this response card that's in your hand right now, there's a box right there that says, today I'm making a first-time decision to surrender my life to Jesus. I want to invite you to do that. Check that box. Receive your King today. Let him be the light and the joy that only he can be. And not just for today, but he wants to be that light and that joy for you forever. Maybe the question for you today is where are you walking in darkness right now? Where are you lacking real joy right now? And you just, maybe what you need to write on your card as a response is like, hey, there are some joyless places in my life that I'm still trying to walk through spaces in darkness. And you just need to be honest with yourself and honest with Jesus and have that conversation with him today as your response. For others of you, maybe it's just like answering the question, where do I need Jesus' light to shine? Where do you need Jesus to teach you to walk in joy again? And you just need to write something on your card like, I'm inviting Jesus to teach me to walk in joy in whatever area is right for you, to write that down and to make that your response to him today. Because the darkness, like that spiritual darkness, it may be real, but it does not have to win. Because the light has come and he is joy to the world. The team's going to lead us in a song of reflection right now and a song of response. And as they do, I just want to encourage you, like, have those conversations on this response card. Like, write out the things that you and Jesus need to start the conversation over. And when you're done, feel free to stand and join in as we worship the Lord together and celebrate him being light and joy. Right now, let's take time to reflect, but then let's step in and let's worship together.